Didn't get
Well,
the
I'm
count.
super excited.
Yeah.
Sorry, John. This is okay. So let's just name something that's happening. This is a really, really exciting time,
Yeah.
because today we are going to be launching basically our slate for the Lectern for
Yes.
next year.
Yeah.
And that's all the exciting things that we've been teasing for quite a while. If you've been in the courses, you might have heard John drop a couple of things. And that's just because the excitement it can't be contained. So we're here to sort of show off a few things, and but let's begin kind of slow. For those of you who don't know, I'm Ethan. I run sort of the back end of the Lectern, where John is the amazing front end, taking us through courses as a platform. So I really would like to start by just doing a bit of a reflection. How was this year? How was our first year, John?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's great to be here. I'm very excited. I'm excited to see a lot of this. The first year was incredible for me. I mean, we did literature in the meaning crisis. We did Einstein and Spinoza's God, realizing the imaginal, and then we've done part 1 and part 2 already. There's a part 3 coming of seeing God again for the first time. And first of all, I'm extremely proud in a virtuous sense of the work that I've done and the work that I've done with the students. The students are amazing. At like the quality of questions and the degree of interactions. And then I meet with many of them one-on-one, and they share with me, how much, they feel they've grown through the courses. And that's just extremely encouraging and gratifying as a teacher. I've enjoyed all the courses. I feel that the work I'm doing is growing my thinking and something more growing my heart in a really important way. That's been consonant with the philosophical Silk Road pilgrimage. I feel that there's been a pilgrimage. There's been sort of two interlocking pilgrimages: the philosophical Silk Road pilgrimage, which feeds back into the courses, especially the Seeing God Again courses. But they, of course, have fed into the pilgrimage and enabled it and deepened it. And so that has just been extremely, extremely powerful. I love the format. It's so wonderful. The students are showing up, and there's so much enthusiasm. There's so much engagement. They even appreciate each other's presence and contributions.
The
I
chat
love,
goes wild. Chat
yeah,
goes wild in course rooms.
the chat goes wild, and then like I said, the Q&As are amazing. And of course, I have for some people, I have the one-on-one tutorials, and many of them, what they're doing is they're bringing sort of personal projects to me, and they're trying to bridge between what they're learning in the lectern, their personal projects. Some people are writing books. Some people are going through, various kinds of transformative practices, etc. It gets me to do so much. I'm talking too much. I'm so enthusiastic. It's just been an absolute joy.
Oh, 100. I mean, you've named it to the students, I think even a couple of weeks ago on Seeing God Again for the first time. And I really love what you said, because as a teacher, it strikes me as well. You were saying that, like, wow, you guys, the student cohort, you're like Socrates to me.
Yeah.
And there's a way in which I see that also, like, kind of evolving your thought. And we were together on the Silk Road for a while in Amsterdam. And even then, there's so much talk around, like, and then talking to Bishop Maximus, informed sort of Seeing God Again for the first time here back there. So they actually talk together in such a deep way.
Well, and very deep. Like, of course, when I was in Amsterdam, the sage Spinoza, you were there, and Jason, my son, was there. And I had done Einstein and Spinoza's God. And of course, one of the great moments is when we went up to the loft and the guide said, "Look right here." And there was Einstein. He had signed the guest book to Spinoza's house.
You can see
moments
his
like
signature.
that.
God, that was amazing. That was really amazing. A very profound, like, moment. And it's also worth naming that, like, this was our first year. We didn't know how this would go.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't. And it's really amazing to watch all of the courses full on sell out.
Yeah.
From, like, Einstein and Spinoza's God all the way straight through to seeing God again for the first time, it has been very overwhelming. And I mean that in like a good way. As somebody who runs a platform, and I've never done this before, to be fair, watching the reception and the amount of support that has come through has been actually really astounding. It's something that's very, very profound for me. Was just in my own daily life, sort of hearing people say like, but we don't understand this. Why do we need to study philosophy? People are not interested in that. And what the Lectern has become as like symbolically in my life is a resounding no. No, people are interested, and I've seen them like open deep questions with you and in concert with others. What would you think about sort of like the way in which the Lectern might move itself through our culture? What do you see as the positionality of what we're doing in relation to the meaning crisis, which is where you started?
Yeah, excellent question. So I think there's two dimensions to that. The first is the Lectern, and again, and thanks to your amazing help, the students are co-creating this. We're basically creating a place, not a space, a place, meaning that people feel that belongs to it, and they belong to it belongs to them, and they belong to it, and they belong to each other. It's not just taking up space. There's a real sense of community and communing, and in that place, I think what's taking place is what Hadot had recommended: the return of philosophy, not as the academic, technical examination of conceptual and theoretical debate, but as a living cultivation of wisdom and virtue and human flourishing, individually and collectively. And I think the Lectern represents that. It represents a model of education as the right as what it was in the ancient world, where the point of it was the cultivation of wisdom, virtue, and human flourishing. And so I think that's the first thing. The second thing is the Lectern has been progressively, and I think organically, evolving into an increased venue and avenue by which we can try and afford the advent of the sacred, a new way of relating to reality, to being, to each other, a new ontology, if you want to use some fancier words, new models of cognition, new models of the nature of meaning, and ways of plausibly and in an intellectually respectable manner recovering terms like soul and spirit. Is there a way in which we can rebirth them so that they can take place again for us? They're not just sort of metaphors or things people used to use that we don't make sense anymore, without buying into moribund metaphysics. And so that we're doing that really, really interesting challenge. And I think that's where the Lectern has progressively intertwined with the philosophical Silk Road and other things that I'm doing. So I think those are the two big things it's offering people in the culture at large. And they go together. One is, okay, can we come to a place where we love wisdom, and where wisdom doesn't mean arcane or technical language and thought? It means of course, we have to develop vocabulary, but it means a way of building a framework that will afford practices and transformations, and then and so that is very, very interesting. Sorry, I just got a notice from Riverside, um, and then, like I said, in conjunction with giving people, I mean, this sounds almost like a Hallmark card, but like reasonable hope that the meaning crisis, culturally, collectively, and individually, can be addressed, can be ameliorated, that they can come to a different way of being. And of course, what's been most encouraging for me is that's the overwhelming feedback we're getting from the students, that it's fulfilling those two functions. many of students say, you know, I'm giving, they attribute it to me. But what's happening with the material and the work is it's giving them, you know, it's giving them new vocabulary, it's bringing science, and it's renewing their ability to think deeply, to undertake practices, you know, and we're going to say a lot more about what we're planning to do to afford that going forward. But that's my answer to your question.
Well, you know, you've outlined a very sort of like systematic cultural poll, and I'll, as I usually do, sort of bring it out to the individual. I've heard, because I've been in all of the courses, and you know, Ben and I will take rotational shifts to record and make sure that like all of the stuff is properly retained and archived. And I have to say, like, watching you lecture at this frequency, more so than Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, inspired me to become a better teacher. Like I was very, very hesitant to do any kind of lecturing for a long time. And like, I didn't want to even apply for like assistant professor jobs, stuff like that. But I don't know how to explain it without sounding pompous, but watching you articulate arguments with the clarity, like conceptual clarity, but also the good faith with which you take questions. You never shut anybody down. You've never discouraged people from asking a question. You've never challenged them in a way that made them dismiss themselves or their concerns. You always held it well. And that's really like inspired me to change kind of the way that I approach students or participants or coaching clients or even like say when we're in a practice with DID. There's an opening that I felt very profoundly, which I don't think could happen if I wasn't actually like a part of the lectures, not just to understand and grab the propositions, but like you're talking about, a different way of relating, to understand how it is we transmit ideas, grow them, interrogate them, reiterate them, refine them. And you exemplify that by, I think, coming forward. This is the second part of Seeing God Again for the first time and going, I'm making a correction to what I just did. It's a review, but it's also a correction. Yeah. And I want to name that humility to your face.
Well, thank you. Again, I mean, I owe that ultimately to the inspiration to aspiration from Socrates, but I also owe it to the students. They reciprocate. Yes, I do extend to them, I think, a welcoming place, but they reciprocate, and they have taken me at my word in an honorable way, which is, I think, the hallmark of a reasonable person is their willingness to engage in public self-correction. And so that, I think, and that has the effect of encouraging them to engage in front of other people in self-correction, in transformation. That's the thing. I can see more and more as we do this, and as I talk to the students, it's their thing they really care about, and their thing they want more of in some ways is they're putting this into practice. This is not about satisfying intellectual curiosity. That is not the primary thing that the courses are offering. It will do that if you want, but it is I'm offering, I believe, so much more, and they're taking so much more from it.
Mm-hmm. I would agree, and that's definitely the case that I've heard from students. Is why so many of them keep coming back. Yeah. And that's always really encouraging to go through all the courses. But having said that, though, like, we don't just offer courses on the Lectern. It's not just you teaching for 8 weeks at a time. And this is sort of for us to also pivot over to kind of the other pole. With one pole is the courses, the other pole is the membership.
Yes.
And this is kind of like a monthly subscription type model that we have. But we also have different ways in which those tiers are offering different kinds of ways of engaging. So I want to do almost two things at one time. One is to name some of the changes that are coming up for memberships in the coming year, and also to kind of like reflect a little bit on like how have those been. So the first thing that's up would be our alpha tier. Our alpha tier is our $10 subscription, right? And the offering that's tied to that is the Lectern Q&As. For those of you who are not familiar, Lectern Q&As happen monthly. They normally surround a theme, and each of the themes are linked together in sequence. So however it gets explicated, we'll pick up kind of a through line and thread that through. So if you were to come onto Alpha and watch Lectern Q&As, you're basically watching an entire argument, an entire through line that's built up over hours. And what's really powerful is that these Q&As are set up in such a way that if you remember, you pre-submit questions. There's a form for you to fill in that's modeled after DID. So it helps to elucidate the question and refine it. And then what I'll do is I'll curate the questions, and then I'll string them together in such a way that John and I can move through those, and it gets us from one place to another. I'm really, at this point, more of like a mouthpiece. I'll do some paraphrasal, but for the most part, I'm trying to honor the questions that are coming through. And we've been doing this since the Patreon. So I'm like, how Lectern Q&As land for you.
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, you started doing this sort of extemporaneously, and then I just said, this is exquisite and excellent. Let's make this our standard operating procedure. And then you just ran with it, and it's just been glorious. We're going to be, so I want to make sure I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're going to be switching, so the Lectern Q&As will be, people will be able to ask questions on YouTube. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So that was the big change that I was going to leave for later, but you know, I guess that's what happens. You get called into it. So up to this point for the first year, Lectern Q&As have been behind the paywall, right? And then they're so good and they're so robust at this point. We have our one regular special guest Sabri showing up, and we were saying that like, man, we want more people in this. So John and I decided like, hey, let's make Lectern Q&As public and live stream to YouTube starting this month.
Great. So please continue with some of with the membership.
Sure. Yeah. So after Alpha is Beta. And Beta is our $25 tier. And the thing that's tied to that is Lectern Dialogues. So Lectern Dialogues is kind of like a version of Voices of Vervaeke, but it's more deep divey. So John, you and I sit together at the start of the year, and we curate guests that we go, these are people that
this is such a joy for me.
It's gonna start going. And what we'll do is we set you up with I think 3 conversations, 3 long-form conversations with these very, very expert folks. And yeah, I mean, I'm hardly around for those conversations because of time zone issues, but without revealing who we have coming up yet, how have the ones thus far been? We've had Douglas Headley, we've had Charles Stang, we've had
Zevi Slavin.
Zevi, yes.
Yeah. Are they
Evan Thompson.
Evan Thompson. Fantastic. The guests have all really appreciated the format. You know, we have a series of 3 dialogues. So there's a lot of deep development. A lot of room for spontaneous insight and creation in process. So people get to see, that's part of the inappropriate mystique around the academic world. All that gets turned to the public is the polished, over-polished final product that's put in some little pristine journal that nobody reads. And I mean, I understand peer review. I'm not criticizing that, but what happens here is you get to see instead real human beings really wrestling together in a dialogical fashion, and you get to see the creative process with all the bumps on it and all the developments and all the insight. So you can get a much more participatory engagement with the process rather than just having to consume the product, which is a model we are trying to break. We're trying to go from a consuming the product to a participating in the process. And the
Yes.
Lectern dialogues really allow people to do that.
Yeah, that's massive for me, because at least like as a blossoming academic, I suppose, one of the things which really put me off from entering academia was this sense of like the ivory tower. And what I'm hearing you say is like, look, we're people too. Like we have to talk, we have to try and figure stuff out. And I've heard you talk about it, that's those conversations and those interlocutors are hard to come by.
Yeah.
And we've been really blessed with good people who engage properly in good faith all the time.
I mean, and they're all such, they're all, they're clear thinkers, and they're warm-hearted, and for them, this is about the love of wisdom. It's not about the, like, again, technical machinery of debate or abstract theorizing. They're gifted scholars, all of them. That's not in question, but the Lectern dialogues has, it seems, I think you can, again, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but what it's done is it's given, and they've said this to me in various ways, it's given like the people that come on them a venue in which they can be more enthusiastic about what they're doing, rather than sort of like very rigorous and and that sort of thing. Of course, they're being rigorous, but I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a serious playfulness that comes into the Lectern that you don't normally associate with academics, and you get to see that these people really care, and we choose people. Well, there's people we don't choose because we don't think we get this from them, but these people that we choose, they really care, and they really think that this is something valuable to others, and so that's been affording that, and participating in that has been a great joy.
Yeah, and I think like it's very rare to have that kind of continued contact with an interlocutor.
Oh yeah,
you might see somebody cool at a conference and then talk to them for a while, but I think what I've heard you name is like the ways in which these conversations have developed into long-standing relationships is also incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Many of these people have become, I consider them good friends. Douglas, Douglas Headley, Charles Stang, Zevi Slavin. Yeah, many of them. Yeah, for sure.
Well, would you like to do the honors of announcing at least a couple of folks who will be coming on and doing Lectern dialogues next year?
No, you do it.
All right, everybody.
Because I want my reason is I want to be reactive. Like I want
to. Okay. Well, I'll give you a reason to be reactive. So I'm very, very happy to announce that for Lectern dialogues this year, the ones that I can name is, you've heard his name a lot recently. You've been watching a lot of John. The beautiful, the compassionate William Desmond is coming on.
Oh, I mean, they say don't meet your heroes. I've met two of my heroes, DC Schindler and now William Desmond, and I am so glad. And William and I are I think we're becoming friends, and we've already recorded one. We've got two more we're going to record. And Guy Senstock is there to sort of help, because he brought us together. Many of you know I taught a course on William Desmond's work on Johannes Niederhauser. Thank you, Johannes. Halkian Academy, and Desmond has become just a profound and ongoing influence. And he's so nice. Like, that sounds. I guess for younger ears, that sounds like that doesn't sound like he's such a decent, warm person, and his philosophy is so cutting edge in both, like in both a cultural sense and in a philosophical sense. Like, he is really responding in a deep way to what comes after sort of postmodernism and nihilism. How can we rejuvenate our connectedness to reality, how we can bring back in a really deep and intellectually responsible way metaphysics as a guide to a deeper way of being being human, being spiritual, perhaps being religious. So that, yeah. See, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to gush about William Desmond.
Hey, John, you reckon we should write a book?
Yeah, for sure.
You want to talk a little bit about the book?
So I did 3 courses, and by the way, this is totally copacetic with Johannes. I did 3 courses. I'm very proud of them on Helking Academy, and again, thank you, Johannes. That was an amazing,
Really
just
good courses.
amazing, and the venue, and Johannes was there helping. Appreciate it a lot. So I did a course on
Beyond nihilism.
yeah, Beyond Nihilism, Ultimate Reality, God and Beyond, and then God and the Between, which was the course on
Yes.
on Desmond.
William Desmond.
And I didn't want this to stay there. And so I approached Ethan because, like, he never has very much to do. Actually, he's one of the busiest people I know. But and I said, I think you're the right person for this. I want to take those 3 courses, to have an AI convert them into transcripts, and then you go through them and turn them into a book, which Ethan has been working on, and I'm working on. And why don't you tell him the title you chose? Because you chose the title, which I love.
The book is titled Beyond and Between.
Yeah. So this book is about how we move beyond nihilism by returning to what I call the transjective, what William Desmond calls the metaxu, and he gets that from Plato. And there's a whole host of people who are talking about Catherine Pickstock and the return to a conformity contact model of epistemology and ontology. And so this is really, really important to me. Einstein and Spinoza's God is being turned into a book right now too. I'm working with Saba, and fully intend to take the 3 Seeing God Again for the first time, and also the convergent version of it I teach at U of T, COG 470. And also some courses I've done for the Peterson Academy, especially the primacy of beauty, the centrality of goodness, and the ultimacy of truth. And that's going to be turned into sort of, I guess, my magnum opus. And Ethan is going to help me with that too.
Yeah, and I'm really honored to be doing that. Obviously, that goes without saying. But I think there's also a way in which you've generated such amazing content. What I'm doing is I'm not injecting my own stuff necessarily, but I am structuring it, and that's in a way to get it really like practical and lived in and hands-on, so that it lives off the page. And that's a lot of what we're doing. I'm aware of our time and where we need to go, because I can see the breakdown.
Keep us moving.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk through a few things. So after beta is the gamma tier. And the gamma tier is where we introduce this idea, or at least I talked to you about this idea quite a while ago, called Silk Road Seminars. And the idea behind Silk Road Seminars was to have a live event where the first half was a conversation between you and an expert guest, and the other half was a Q&A where students could come and ask questions to both you and the guest. And that came from an impulse of, when I was a student, I really wanted to see my teachers be challenged. Not because I thought they were wrong, but because I wasn't able to talk to them at that level. And so what we've been able to do with Silk Road Seminars is we make it completely free for all full-time students. If you're a full-time student at university, or you are you're apprenticing, say, as in a 3-year course to be a psychotherapist, or studying traditional Chinese medicine, something like that, drop me an email. I'll put you on the guest list so that you get notified about Silk Road Seminars. As they come out, you get access to the Q&A, which is not publicly available, even though the dialogue is public. So maybe a few words about Gamma, and then I want to go on to talk about the new offering, or Silk Road seminars, and then I want to talk about the new offering that we're putting into Gamma.
Okay. Well, the Silk Road seminars are amazing. I've talked to a lot of people about that. And here's again where the interweaving with the philosophical Silk Road has happened, because one of our Silk Road seminars was actually me talking to Bishop Maximus in Rome as part of the video series, The Philosophical Silk Road. And there you can, and I mean, all the Silk Road seminars are amazing. That one just comes to mind because that one, it was like a real powerful moment for me when I'd been doing all this work. Douglas, both Douglas and Charles worked to invite to, and I'm very grateful for it, to invite me to many really living academic conferences where like people are there with the right spirit. And I've been doing a bunch of those. I've been really working on this notion of voluntariness, voluntary necessity, yeah, and all that. We have a video on that. We still have to release. And I was doing all that, and then he was giving he basically gives a talk on a lecture on Clement, and then I bring in my idea, and we get this convergence over a new way for me, maybe not for him, but a new way of understanding faith as the nexus of the voluntary necessity that's in reason and love and beauty. And it was just like a really, really powerful moment because, and then that carried back into seeing God again for the first time, because we explored the notion of faith not as believing without evidence and argument, but instead this sense of the voluntary necessity that gives you a sense of being called into something, a faithfulness to something that that you're indwelling and internalizing in an ongoing fashion. And that move in particular, many moves, but the students really resonated with that because they were hungry for, like, the phenomena of faithfulness never went away, even though we brought the notion of faith into disrepute because of the modern understanding of faith as a belief without evidence and argument. And so once they were able to articulate something that was very much alive in their life and something that their lives depend on in a profound way, and their mental, psychological, cognitive, spiritual health depends on that. That was very powerful. So the Silk Road seminars, and then people get a chance to ask questions. It's powerful. It's powerful because I pick that as one example of many where that's what you're talking about. There's that challenge. There's that call. There's the chance, right? Like Bishop Maximus brought the best out of me, and I think I helped to do that for him too. And then So, anyways, that
And here's something. So that conversation allows for a viable conceptual decoupling.
Yeah.
And the person that I've sort of thought about as really potentially really benefiting from this is like, it was like an undergraduate theology student. That's who I want to come to Silk Road seminars, right? If you watch Silk Road seminars, when you're doing your BA thesis, right, follow it through into your master's, follow it through into your PhD. I think I speak for you as well when I say that we want to see you succeed, which is why Silk Road seminars are made available. Now, having said that, courses are also very important.
Yes.
The courses is where the bulk of the argument is, where you got the citations from. So I'll give you the bad news first and the good news first. The bad news is Gamma used to be $100 per month. It's now going up to $125 per month. And the reason why we do that is because we're throwing in something called the Rewind Pass. And the Rewind Pass is from now on, all of the previous year's courses, so we're now entering 2026, all of the 2025 courses get stacked into a bundle that is part of the Gamma membership.
Yes.
On top of that, we're also reducing the cost. So the cost of the self-study courses used to be $450. Once they are published and online for a year, they drop down to $300.
Yeah.
Because we really want it to be made available. And there are plans to reduce it further as we go on. So the Rewind Pass will allow you to get these courses like as a bundle, and then you get to watch them and go through them just as people did last year. And frankly, if Plato's around still, I think waiting a year for John Vervaeke's courses is still all right. But so that's not all. What I told John and have been telling folks is that what I don't want is for your work, these courses, to become glorified archival. And I don't want it to be left there. They need to live and continue to grow, which is why all self-study courses at specific points within the year will be entered into what we call a teaching assistance program, all right? Or we call it on tap. So you have a course on tap. These are small, intimate groups, 20 people. They're limited to sign up. It's got a small top-up fee of 150. But what happens when you enter into a tap is you'll get 2 weeks of the courses. Your homework will be to watch 2 of the lectures, and then we'll gather every other week to run, ultimately, what is a Socratic salon. And this is something that I'm taking the initiative to pilot first, even though I know that there are some people who will be interested in taking that up. I want to be clear, this is teaching assistance program, not teaching authoritarian program. I'm not here to countermand you or your argument. What I am here to do is to facilitate a discussion of the kind that we were talking about earlier. So if you don't mind saying a couple of words of like, what is a Socratic salon like? You describe it better than I do.
Well, I mean, I've led a few of them on retreats, and they're not as like we have more formalized, structured practices like dialectic and the dialogos and the Socratic search space. The Socratic salon is much more where one person will make themselves available for being questioned on the understanding that that person gets to question the questioner. And that's sort of the move. So like when I did this in a retreat last year, the retreat that I ran with Kyle and with Guy, and people, they come in, they ask questions, and I'll answer the question, but then I will often question them in a Socratic fashion, trying to draw out, and so you get kind of a more informal dialogos going, and people get their questions addressed. But often when people ask questions, and this is part of the Socratic knack, they're often not fully articulating the question they need addressed. And that includes me, by the way, right?
Yeah.
But people who have done a lot of Socratic practices, like myself and Ethan, and are very familiar with the material, we can answer that part of the question. But we also have the skills and hopefully the virtues to be Socratically provocative and try and get at, okay, so you asked me this question. And we do a little bit of that when we're doing the courses in the Q&A. I'll sometimes ask people, so I answered your question, but let me ask you a question. Like, is this going on, or is this happening, or I sense that there's and you try and do what we call amplification in dialectic and the dialogos with people. And what that does is that brings in an existential beyond the merely intellectual, so that what's happening is people are not only addressing their curiosity with questions, you're actually also provoking wonder, so that they're calling themselves and their world into question. And that's what we try to do with the Socratic salon.
And you come to realize like, oh, how much you care about the question.
That's right.
What's underneath it.
That's right.
And I think the salons have been one of my favorite things to do ever since you introduced me to them at Virtuosity in Action.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that it dovetails very well with like the relational practices or intersubjectivity practices that I'm doing. It dovetails well with DID, with Socratic search space. And I think something that I've been wanting to reclaim for myself, but also to inspire in other people, is you think you want to know that thing over there, but that thing over there is actually here. It actually matters here. So this is something that we're going to be rolling out at the start of next year, right? So that people can do Einstein and Spinoza's God on tap. And I look forward to seeing you all at the salon.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Now, as we move through, this is probably where the least changes are going to be, but I'll talk through them rather quickly. The next tier is our Delta tier. This is $200 per month, and you get Silk Road seminars. You don't get the Rewind Pass, but you get a season pass instead. And the season pass is all of the current year's courses in a bundle. You get basically automatically registered for all of the courses. You don't have to sign up ahead of time. We count you as already in when you buy the season pass. And that means you're guaranteed a spot. So between Gamma and Delta, there is a fork. And I try to make this as explicit as possible. If you are realizing like, oh man, no, I need to catch up on all the courses that have been there, hey, go for Gamma, right? If you want to really be at like the cutting edge of stuff, you want to know what's at the edge of the argument and evolve it, right? And wrestle, go for Delta. However, I have to say this: if you are a student, if you are a full-time student, please do not buy either Gamma or Delta. Please do not do that, because it is much cheaper for you to email me. We have student concessions. We'll drop the price of the course, and then you buy Beta on top of that, because you get Silk Road seminars for free anyway, right? So even if you were to do that, like, please let me know if you're a full-time student. I will cancel your subscription immediately. I'll guide you down the better financial path, right? We want you to learn and grow as much as possible. So please, if you're watching this, don't hesitate. Email me. Let me know. I just need a small proof of enrollment, and I'll be happy to kind of like guide that process. It's worth it to just name. It might take a while for me to get to that because we have a small team, and we don't use any AI to help with customer service. So anytime that you're talking to somebody, you're talking to me. So it will take me a while to get there. But the effort here is like, I don't want auto replies coming to you guys. I sit down, I write every email, as tired as I might be, but I try to be as sincere, but also as quick as I can and as efficient as I can. So I ask for some patience and some charity, but please know that this is a choice that we're making, right?
Yes, and I think it's a valuable choice. I think we are trying. There's a couple of principles we are trying to uphold here. One is we are trying to do a reliable recognition of the status of students and be helpful towards that. Remember, that doesn't just mean that you're in an academic university. It can mean that you're in a psychotherapeutic training program. You're training for Chinese acupuncture. Proof that you're in a bona fide, vetted program that counts. The other principle, as Ethan said, is we want as much as possible for you to be knowing that you'll be interacting with human beings. This is becoming increasingly important, and it will become more important. I predict rather confidently as we go forward. In fact, one of the functions of the Lectern is to give people access to the kind of education that puts them in touch with those aspects of their humanity, individually and collectively, that are not going to be captured, at least in any foreseeable time, by the AI. And so this is your place. And in recognition that we stand for the flourishing of humanity, Ethan has very kindly, because it does take extra time on his behalf, right? Has very kindly to do this role of giving you a human person when you're to guide you through things. So I just wanted to flag that, like, the Lectern is trying very hard. We're aspiring to do things with virtue and virtuosity. So I'll turn it back over to you, Ethan.
Thanks, John. I want to double click on the being human bit, because I think there is a way in which we're sort of wading through the AI waters, and I have concerns about future proofing. But as I was talking to a friend earlier today, so much of this, what we do is, okay, how do we become even more human? What is that? When we talk about human flourishing, And I know that this excites me, but I also know that it's going to excite a lot of people who have been asking the question of, okay, after awakening from the meaning crisis, what's next?
Yes.
We've been talking about this for a long time. So I'm very, very happy to announce that the Lectern and the company that I run, 5 to Midnight, is going to come together and collaborate on an 8-month-long practical program called TIAMAT-X.
Excellent.
It's 8 months. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. You want...
No. I want you to talk a lot about it. I just thought we should also mention Taylor Taylor Barratt.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And it's not just the John that will be there. It's not just me co-teaching. Taylor Barratt, the wonderful Taylor Barratt, who, by the way, builds the pedagogy for DID, help us design Socratic search space. We were doing Socratic imaginal self-reflection. All of those practices are in TIAMAT-X, by the way. And he also runs Awaken to Meaning.
Yeah.
He'll be there throughout the entire thing for us and with us. Sorry, did I say for us? With us.
Yeah.
Now, TIAMAT-X is very, very, it's a long-form program that's going to be largely in the EU time zone. Part of that is because I can't stay awake and run workshops until 1 o'clock in the morning for the Eastern time zone, right? But also because in the containers that I've been running, I've gone to meet some wonderful people who are now training as facilitators, and a lot of them are based in the EU. So it's not just me, it's not just John, it's not just Taylor. You'll also be supported by 7 wonderful facilitators in training who are bridging the gap and really there to get to help get a sense of intimacy with the cohort, right? Now, the way this will run is we will start in January, end of January next year. Okay, you'll see the course page going up real soon, right? And it is going to be every other week practice session. There'll be some framing lectures where we'll talk through things like shadow work. We'll talk through things like character adaptation. What do I mean by the ego? Because I'm a Jungian, I have to talk about that, right? So we'll have these online sessions, and there will be 2 in-person retreats. There'll be a TIAMAT Tier 1 that happens in Netherlands at the Universal Sufi Temple, the Universal Murad Hasil. That's going to be amazing, which is this beautiful, it's a temple, but it's also a museum, and people can go in and meditate, and we have pilgrimages every year. And then we'll have a few months break, and then after that, we'll come back together again for the second in-person, right? The first one is 3 days, the second one is 5 days long of TIAMAT Tier 2. And that's anagoge through dynamics, where we're doing a lot of work on shadow, on projection, on assumptions, on judgment, belief, desire. And that will be 5 days in Czechia. We'll have a cottage to ourselves. It has like log cabins all around and a big open space for us to live together and to practice together. And then once we finish with that, we'll come back, we'll take you through an integration and transfer process. And then as the roadmap moves along, if you are up to it, if you feel at capacity and there's a mutual acknowledgement of health and safety, you can be invited onto a TIAMAT Tier 3 container, which is required to take up what we call SPIRE facilitation training. And then I really recommend this. Like, if you are looking to lead people through a process of development, please consider coming for TIAMAT-X. It's a big commitment. Do not impulse buy this. Do not impulse buy this. Take your time. My team and I are running events and talks. We'll do a Q&A, right? As well as some online workshops for you to get a sense of what we're doing. Make an informed decision, because we are asking for a lot of your time and a lot of your money. And I don't want to be facetious about that. It is quite hefty. It's not anything ridiculous, and we try and space it out. But I want to be very, very clear. The commitment that's required is not small. So, really consider it, and consider it well. Yeah. So that's a lot of what I have to say. Anymore, I'll be rambling. But is there anything to add, John?
Well, I mean, this is our first major response. There are going to be others to something we continually get from the students, which is the lectures and the Q&A and the dialogue and the tutorials are excellent, and we're adding more to that, as we've already said. But a lot of people say, yeah, but I want to practice. I want to learn I want to learn practices. This is your opportunity. Like I said, this is our first big addressing that. Ethan and Taylor and I, also Christopher Master Petro, we're working towards the possibility of getting something more as an ongoing thing as part of the Lectern, where people can, in addition to the lecture courses, be taking courses on practice. TIAMAT-X is the way in which we're basically launching that initiative to start to respond in depth to people's requests. Now, the thing you have to understand is when you're learning practice, like it takes a lot more from the instructor. You have to be there to be with people. You have to be in person with them, and they have to have much more interaction. So it demands more time and demands a proper venue. And this is why you get the added cost.
Yeah, and I think it's divided into a tuition fee and a residential fee, and we are very transparent about that, right? How much of it is going towards actually sustaining just being there for the amount of time we need to be in person, right? And how much of it is to also be able to say, okay, we're paying facilitators, we're getting people to come in and ensure that there's intimacy in groups so that nobody is left unheard. It's going to be a big cohort. We're aiming for, I can accommodate about 60 people for this cohort, right? Which means we have to divide the in-persons into two groups, like a group 1 and a group 2, right? But that just means with 30 people and 10 facilitators, ultimately, that ratio allows us to address things and ensure that people are safe, but you're also growing. So this is where we are. Now, I know that I said this is actually for the EU sort of audience. If you are in NA and you want to stay up for the online sessions, you're welcome to. If you would like to, I wouldn't begrudge that. But this doesn't mean that the NA is left out. So so much of our courses, especially all this year, has been done in your mornings, right? And that means that people get to wake up and do some philosophy, which a couple of years ago you told me is the best way to wake up, and I agree. So we're going to talk a little bit about the courses that are coming up for 2026, because you're not teaching all of them.
No.
Right.
So it has always been.
What just a rough headline of what the courses are. If I'll help you out if you need.
Yeah, I'm just looking up. I just want to make sure I get the order right. Okay, so there's. We're going to be starting not with John Vervaeke in 2026. We're starting with Mark Miller. I'll be. Mark has requested that I'll guest lecture in the course, which I will. But Mark is a former student of mine. He's a colleague of mine at the University of Toronto. While I'm on sabbatical, he's the person teaching the courses, Introduction to Cognitive Science, that I normally teach. Mark is. He's considered one of the great teachers already. He is charismatic. He's powerful. The student evaluations for Mark are amazing.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with Mark and the other day, just to sort of do some of the marketing things ahead of time. And the stuff that he was talking about, because so much of it is around predictive processing. Actually, I don't feel qualified to talk through the courses. But who is John?
Who?
Mark Miller, Brendan Graham Dempsey, and Charles Stang are more than qualified to talk through all of these courses. And I would like to welcome them into the room. Thank you very much. Please join studio if you are here, guys.
Excellent. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, they will give them a minute to come in because I think it lags through on the YouTube. Hey.
Is Charles here as well?
Yeah, he's coming in. He's coming in.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Brennan.
Hey.
Hey, friends. How's it going?
That was amazing. This was unexpected. So excellent. What a wonderful surprise. So I'll just say a bit
Hey,
while
John,
we're
how's it
waiting for
going?
Charles. It's always been my vision that I would not be the only voice at the lectern. I always wanted to be other voices and vibrant voices that would converge with the lectern, but would also complexify it. And so, hey, there he is. Hey, Charles. And so we've got the three people here. I reached out to all three of these beautiful gentlemen, and I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to ask them to talk about the courses they're going to be offering. And first of all, many of you have seen me in deep discussions with all of these people, and you're going to see Charles when the Philosophical Silk Road is released, because he was there with me in Athens. It's good to see you again, by the way, Charles. So let's Ethan, if you want to sort of shepherd us through, it'd be great if everybody could talk and about their course, and let's make sure we tell when it's going to be happening, what it's going to be about. So go ahead, Ethan.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, Mark, man, it's good to see you, brother.
Hey,
yeah,
how's it
why
going,
don't you
Ethan?
go ahead and tell us a little bit, it's go ahead and tell us a little bit about Generations of Joy, the cognitive science of happiness and well-being. We talked a lot about it.
Exactly, yeah. It's a delight. It's just an absolute delight to be able to offer this. Thanks, guys, for making such a wonderful place for it. This is my so far my life's work. So I'm going to be able to put together in one place sort of everything that I think is the most sort of exciting, interesting, pretty sexy cognitive science of how to be well. Sexy and like completely applicable. Sexy because we're like one of the things that I work with John so closely with that I get to spend a lot of my time doing is exploring some of the brand new cutting edge cognitive science models that we have.
Yeah.
And we're in a sort of Copernican revolution right now for what we think about cognitive systems. And it's opening all sorts of new powerful doors for understanding where do cognitive systems like us go wrong? Where is it a problem? And also more importantly, where can we make it better, and where can we new ways of understanding what happiness and well-being are, and also the sorts of practices that can lead us to happiness and well-being. So the cool thing for me is I get to do the most interesting research that I do in this course. It's a delight. And it's not only interesting, but I think it's hugely applicable. So I think this is also the research that gets us into contact with the kinds of practices and the kind of view that's, I think, most supportive of long-term happiness and well-being. And it's a perfect time for it. We've just ended a 2-year granted project called the Predictive Dynamics of Happiness and Well-being. We have all of the research in. This is very much living research. It's going to be so cool. Well, I mean, this will not be a course by telling you about something that was done 10 years ago or even 1 year ago. This will be a course where I'm going to be augmenting it week by week as the research comes in.
Wow.
So it's very fresh. It's very alive. And it's what I love talking about to John most about, and I get to pull him in for almost nearly half of the course to talk about it. And we'll do loads of good stuff.
Yeah, and there are 5 of us in the room. Most of you are much smarter than I. So by all means, I've specifically allocated this whole remaining hour of time for us to basically open up into a 5-way discussion. And part of that is because there is a through line that runs through the course or the courses from the year, starting all the way from TIAMAT-X, all the way down to Demons in Divinity, which is Charles's course. And so I'm wondering if we can I don't know, is there a way in which we can thread this through? Because I think who's next? You, John. Between East and West.
So this is I've been saying cryptic, enigmatic things here and there about Zen Neoplatonism, and so I decided to be less cryptic, open the crypt, and try and make that a positive platform for people. Now, to foreshadow that, I will be talking with Nicole Abaddon very soon. She is a Zen abbotess, and she was the first person that I openly, we were at a conference actually run but to a very significant degree by Charles Stang, and I took Nicole aside, and she had given an excellent talk on Zen, and she was familiar with my work, and I said, do you think there can be a Zen Neoplatonism? And she looked at me, and she said, yeah, I think so. And then, in a very Zen fashion, she walked away. So to turn that into something more, I just want to quickly give you an idea. I brought some books to show you, just so you have a sense of what we're going to be relying on. So the Zen Neoplatonism is sort of the epitome of the aspiration of the philosophical Silk Road, where Neoplatonism is the spiritual backbone, the synoptic integration, if you will, of the West. And notice I do this because that's a very ambiguous term. And then Zen, insofar as it brings together Taoism and Buddhism and an indigenous philosophy, religion, Shinto, also has a similar kind of status. And they have been talking to each other and seeking each other out for extended periods of time. So we're going to start, for example, with D.T. Suzuki, an old and glorious book, Mysticism, Christian and Buddhist. We'll start with that. And what you'll note, of course, is when a point I will make is Christian mysticism is basically Christian Neoplatonism, the people he's making use of, like Eckhart and others. And that's how you'll start to see it. And then somebody who's very close in time, so we start with some older stuff, is William Johnston's work, The Still Point, Reflections on Zen and Christian Mysticism. And so that gives us a background. We're going to do a book by David Hinton, a new book called China Root, Taoism, Chan, and Original Zen, in which he makes, I think, a very important argument that Zen is as, if not more Taoist than it's Buddhist. And I want to bring this out because that combination of Taoism and Buddhism actually makes it more responsive to Neoplatonism, because Neoplatonism is itself, a syncretism of Platonism, Aristotle, Stoicism, etc. So bringing out the syncretism within Zen allows it to talk to the syncretism within Neoplatonism. So that's what we're going to do with this. This is a really beautiful book, by the way. And then we have the two anthologies. When I used to talk about this, people would look at me like, nobody talks about that. Well, that's not true anymore, because we now have two great and recent anthologies. We have Crossing the Stream and Leaving the Cave, Buddhist Platonic Philosophical Inquiries, and we're going to be going through that. And then even more recently, and like I think I bought the first copy of this, is Buddhism and Neoplatonism. There you go. Okay. And so that's what we're going to be going through. All right. And that is an attempt to bring to hopefully a focal clarity how we can get a deeply mutually transformative dialogos between an Eastern interreligious spiritual backbone and a Western interreligious spiritual backbone, and thereby helpfully afford more of the advent of the sacred. That's what's going to be happening in that course.
You know what's wonderful about that, John, just very quickly, flowing out of the course that I'm going to be starting in the year, because we're going to go through some of the cognitive science mechanics.
Yes.
That undergrid things like opioid and the opioid crisis that we're in, also the meaning crisis that we're in. But the last tail, like almost half of the course, is going to be on the cognitive science of meditation, metacognition, self-transcendence, flow, play, adaptive uncertainty, wisdom, insight, plasticity, which is exactly the kind of scientific backbone you might want to have in your pocket to then do a deep dive in the philosophical interconnection between these other models. It's lovely.
You'd almost think that somebody ordered the courses in the way we've done it, and that person, of course, is Ethan. I mean, he was, of course, and he was trying to, there's a joke in academia, trying to get academics together is like herding cats, because they all have really busy schedules, and working with everybody, but still getting that through line. And Mark, I'm glad you picked up on it. Excellent.
Yeah, thanks, Ethan.
I was properly playing like abstract Tetris for months. Because John would message me and go like, "Oh, I want this person and this person and this person to teach on the course," and like immediately I go, where does that fit? How does that go? And Mark, you brought up a really good point, which is like, we're not talking about just the science of stuff that happens at the level of the really, really small, or at the level of like the really big and abstract. When you come into these with practices, having done ecology of practice, maybe you've been a meditator for many years, right? Maybe you've been doing contact improv, or maybe you've attended a workshop at ATM, or you've done some work with me, or if you're in TIAMAT-X, this would be really helpful. You have two gateways to walk through. You want to walk through the science is going to take you into the philosophy. It's going to take you into the spirituality of the philosophy of spirituality. You can go through the philosophy, and you're not going to run away from the science. They're going to come together. And I think like where I'm really interested is, well, no, there's a way in which you could situate those within a scientific framework and a philosophical framework, and they talk together. But there's also a way in which they need to fit together into a narrative framework. What is that historically? And that's why I'm super excited about Brendan's course, which we've called Matters Over Time, because we want to figure out what matters over time, as in like a history of the evolution of meaning. If I quoted you right, go ahead, Brendan, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, I'm really excited for this. And by the way, it's great to see everyone here. It's a delight. But yeah, I'm really excited for this. What we're going to basically be doing is, speaking of sort of science and philosophy speaking together, start out with the question of meaning. What is meaning? What do we mean by meaning? And of course, there's a lot of rich work that John's done on this topic around relevance, realization, that sort of thing. But actually trying to track that all the way back to sort of a first principles approach, and thinking about meaning at like a really information and thermodynamic level. And so starting out with sort of what does it mean to be able then to track the progression or complexification of what meaning or meaningful information for entities in context. That's sort of our starting place. That kind of grounds and frames this notion and situates human meaning as part of a broader process of relevance, realization, and entities learning meaning through learning processes. So once that kind of framework has been laid out, then we'll kind of zoom in to what that looks like at the human level, now that we've got some of that theoretical framing. And then to do this, we're going to look at both the individual and collective level. So I'm going to start out with sort of what does human meaning making look like across the lifespan, sort of look at ontogenetic models. In particular, we're going to zoom in on a model called faith development theory, which was pioneered by a theologian named James Fowler in connection with sort of developmental psychologists in the Piagetian and neo-Piagetian tradition. And similar to kind of Mark's work, in a sense, this is also going to be a very kind of timely course that's bringing in very, very new research. So I'm doing some research right now, really trying to update the faith development tradition, working with a vast data set, working with some scholars at Sawney. And really trying to bring faith development theory into kind of a new, more expansive frame of human meaning making and worldview studies. And so we're going to be looking at actual faith development interviews and seeing how certain ideas unfold and develop across the lifespan, and actually having certain quantitative metrics that you can use, specifically hierarchical complexity, that can actually track how these particular ideas unfold as they develop through basically the individual learning process. So looking at words like meaning, God, spirit, significance, whatever, a whole bunch of really important ideas, including importance itself, I suppose, and seeing how people think differently about these things through their learning processes. So that'll be kind of the individual framing. And then we're going to switch to sort of the sociological level. So how does this get embedded in collective contexts, and how do the individual justification systems people use link up together into kind of more memeplexes and the collective belief structures, religions, worldviews, essentially. So this will be zooming in then, or zooming out rather, at sort of the worldview angle and how human beings make meaning in transjective context with other human beings and in social environments. And then that's really going to tee us up for the remainder of the course, which is with those two kind of angles at the, in on the meaning making question, we'll look at the history. So in terms of matters over time, there's both matters over time for the individual, but there's also how matters have evolved and meaning has complexified and changed and transformed across the human cultural evolutionary process. And so we're going to take a look at sort of these different worldview frames that have come online over the course of 10,000 years and see how they're embedded in particular social organizational contexts. But again, continue to be tracking, like how does the idea of God evolve here? How is the very notion, how does this word mean something different in this context versus this context, and what's going on there? So and we're going to be looking at a lot of really fascinating materials. I mean, gosh, books, there's a whole syllabus I've come up with obviously for this, and I could list off some of these books, but I'll leave it there for now. I'm really super excited for this. We're going to basically be going from sort of really from the dawn of human, civilization, way back hundreds of thousands of years, in the sense of, the move from sort of Paleolithic into Neolithic meaning-making structures into agrarian societies, into the axial age, and then focus on modern, postmodern, and metamodern maybe transformations of meaning-making into the contemporary period. So yeah, that's a little taste of what we'll be getting into.
That's amazing.
Well, I thought I was doing history, but apparently it's going way back. OG history.
But you see, this is one of those things which, like, there's a way in which I feel insignificant in the face of what you've just named. So Brendan, you give us a huge tapestry of not just what we think is big, but actually how what we think is big to us started really small and grew over time. And there's a way in which I used to be a nihilist, I'm self-confessed, right? And there was a point in time where I felt like, okay, nothing was really very significant to me. And then it just fell into a hole, right? Which is very ironic because I'm now writing a book that's based on the course Beyond Nihilism. But someone really helped me get through that. And that person was Nishitani. I picked up Religion and Nothingness. And I've gone through that like back to front twice. And I keep telling people, if you really want to understand me, read Religion and Nothingness. Which I think I put on Tinder, and then no one bid. But I found that, which is great. Now, having said that, though, that tees us up for the next course, which is we will call Notes on Nothing, because the people who tackled nihilism in the most, to my mind, profound, practical, philosophically rigorous way was the Kyoto School. And John will be heading that course. And tell us more about it.
I would say that now I would now say that William Desmond from the Latin West and Christos Ioannaris from the Greek East also have tackled nihilism at that level of depth. And part of what I'm trying to do is to get those three, Desmond, Ioannaris, and the Kyoto School, to talk to each other more deeply. But as Ethan said, the Kyoto School is something that, if you've taken any course with me, the Kyoto School has come up, because I will talk about Nishida or Nishitani. I will make reference to Tanabe. And it's been an ongoing influence on me. Now, I had to wrestle here because I don't think this is going to be my only course on the Kyoto School, because I thought, should we pick a primary text like Religion and Nothingness and go through it? I've already done that in other courses I've taught, where I've gone through the self-overcoming and nihilism. But I thought for this, instead, what I would do was a more comprehensive introduction to the Kyoto School as exemplary of the kind of cross-cultural philosophy, interreligious dialogue that I'm talking a lot about with the Philosophical Silk Road. So we'll make use as an introductory book of the Kyoto School, an introduction by Robert Carter, who was great introducer His book, The Nothingness Beyond God, is what introduced me to the Kyoto. And this is a very good introduction. And that way we'll get introduced to some of the main players. And then we're going to zero in on two. And the two are chosen because they represent sort of poles that are talked about in the Kyoto School, between Jiriki and Tariki, between self-power and other power. And so the one is somebody you heard Ethan just mentioned. This is Nishitani. And we're going to do an anthology of people reflecting on Nishitani, the religious philosophy of Nishitani. Okay, we're going to go through that. And by the same publisher and meant as a companion volume. So this emphasizes, like, it comes up, the form of Buddhism that's emphasized here is Zen. It's very much about practice and how one self-transcends, in conversation with Heidegger, which is really, I will argue continuously, conversation with Neoplatonism. And I'll make that case when I do Zen Neoplatonism. James Filler and others, and Alexandrov and others, the growing consensus, Capobianco, that Heidegger is basically a Neoplatonist who won't admit it, because he has a particularly jaundiced view of Plato. So we'll do this, and then the companion will be the religious philosophy of Tanabe. The same thing. The meta. So this one is Encounter with Emptiness, and this is the meta-noetic imperative. And we're going to go through those, and that way you will get a deep introduction to the Kyoto School. So in some ways, in Zen Neoplatonism, I'll be reaching from the West to the East. And in the Kyoto School, we'll be seeing how the East reached to the West. And I think that by doing those two courses together, I can really help afford people pursuing the kind of either literal or at least figurative interreligious pilgrimage that I have been increasingly advocating for as a meta practice that human beings need to engage in if we're going to better orient ourselves to the advent of the sacred that is taking place in science and biology and systems theory and cognitive science, but also taking place, like the fact that Jonathan Pageau, John Vervaeke, and Michael Levin recently were all talking together and it made sense. That's powerful. And more of that is happening right now. And what we want to do, what I'm hoping to do, is afford that, because I think this is the deepest response. I think this is how the Weltgeist, to quote Hegel, is responding to the zeitgeist of the meaning crisis. And more, I'm convinced, and more people are taking me aside and saying, something's going on. There's this convergence, and there's these dialogues taking place, and something, and there's like a paradigm shift, probably a scientific revolution happening in biology. And one part of that paradigm shift is the way biology and cognitive science are now deeply interweaving with each other. There's just so much. And then the fact that Michael Levin is, here's the cutting edge biologist, he's cited all over the place in Philip Ball's book, How Life Works. And I know Mike, and I've been cajoling Mike for years. I said, Mike, you got to come out. You're a Platonist. And he is. He's a Neoplatonist. And he's basically now publicly said, I've been at conferences, he says, actually, the ontology that's coming out of the biology is best understood as something like a kind of Platonism, especially a Neoplatonism that has an emergence and emanation dimension to it. And of course, and part of that, and I'll let Ethan set him up properly, but part of that for me is the work of my good friend Charles Stang, who is doing maybe more than anybody. Maybe Douglas is up there too, Douglas Headley, but Charles Charles is trying to bring back Platonism as a living tradition in a viable, powerful way. And many of you have seen this in the interactions, the dialogues I've had with Charles. I've had, like, Charles and I, you're going to see a lot of Charles, as I said, on the Philosophical Silk Road. And I think everybody's going to benefit from that. But anyways, Ethan, I didn't want to steal your thunder, but I mean, that's why Charles is here, though. Charles is, amongst other things, Charles is a vital and living presence in the endeavor to recover, in Tolkien's sense, Platonism as a living tradition?
Yeah, well, I mean, you offered the thunder rightfully where it needs to go, which is in Charles's direction. The only thing I was thinking about is at some point I have to title a course called "Coming Out of the Platonic Closet," and then we'll see how that does. Yeah, I mean, I do have a question for Mark and Brendan actually on the back of that,
Ethan?
but I'm willing to hold it. Yeah.
I'm sorry to jump in. I have to catch a flight. So would you mind if I actually just talked about my course and then you can ask a question?
Please do.
Yeah.
Brendan, I'm really sorry to do this. And I also have rather unstable internet. So if it's working, I want to just seize the moment, if you don't mind. First of all, thank you so much, John, for those very kind words. And thank you, Ethan, for making this this morning possible, or what's morning for me at least. It's really wonderful to be a part of this team. As John said, the course I'll be offering, which is called Demons and Divinity, grows out of the dialogue that he and I did for the Lectern last year. And I mean, Brendan's historical scope is vast. And what I will be offering in this course is what to me seems vast, which is about 1,000-year philosophical history of reflection on this figure of the demon or the daimon. And you probably are all familiar with this idea that the Greek concept of the daimon, before that term comes to name evil spirits in the Jewish and Christian tradition, and comes down to us, of course, as demon. That word daimon in the Greek tradition meant a range of things, but none of them evil spirit. So very briefly, the kinds of connotations of that term are first, a kind of intermediary divine being somewhere between humans and gods. Secondly, and these are all kind of entangled. Secondly, the idea that a daimon might have a personal or individual relationship with a human. The most famous instance of that, of course, is Socrates, who says, I had a daimonion, a daimon-like thing that appeared to me as a voice. A third connotation, this especially emerges out of Plato, is the idea that the daimon might actually be your nous, your intellect. So that the daimon might be a faculty that's actually properly yours. And these three meanings essentially are the warp and weft of the Platonic tradition for about 1,000 years. So by virtue of Socrates speaking about this daimon that he had, and we sort of embark on a 1,000-year conversation from Plato to Proclus of what does this individual being, or what do these beings have to do with the practice of philosophy? To quote something John mentioned earlier about the metaxu, the in-between, much of this will ramify in the sense of what Platonists think. How do we enter into this important in-between world? Not the world of the gods, but the worlds between us and the gods, the realm of the soul, the realm of the imagination. How do daimons help us do that? Maybe there's a fourth dimension of daimons that I'll mention also, which is that daimons are also thought at times to be spirits of place. That is to say, they are attached to particular places. So so essentially, this is going to be a course, unlike some of the other courses, this will be a course in which the readings will be almost entirely primary sources. I want to get people reading Plato, Plutarch, Apuleius, Plotinus, Porphyry, Proclus. If these are names that are unknown to you, don't worry, we'll introduce you to them all. But these are some of the great Platonists. And I'll say one last thing, which is this is the material of a book I'm trying to write, which will also, I think, take the form of a lament, by which I mean I lament the fact that philosophy, by and large, has discarded the daimon reflection practice. Can you all hear me? I think.
Yeah, you're a little choppy, but you're coming through, Charles.
Okay, great. Well, maybe I'll just end with this by saying I think there is something to be lamented about the daimon's disappearance from modern philosophy, and maybe more positively to say something to be looked forward to, something to be anticipated if we can recover, revive this part of the Platonist tradition as living. And you'll get a sense of that in my conversation.
I think Charles
said it, unstable internet.
Yeah, he said. I think he was going to say you'll get to see a sense of that if you see the conversations that he and I had around the daemon. I hope I'm foreseeing him correctly, which he's nodding, so I think I did. So yeah,
I'm back, and you said it, John. Yep, yeah. You got it. You finished the sentence.
Good. And so, as just to reinforce that, some of you know, this came up in the conversations that I had with Charles a couple of times, both public and private. He also wrote the very wonderful book, The Divine Double. It's a good book also to perhaps read in preparation for the course, because I think it also gives you that. It gives you a different sense of people as individuals rather than individuals that opens you up to the kind of argument that Charles is going to be presenting in his course. And it's just a bloody wonderful book too. It's extremely well written. So I would recommend that too.
Yeah, I had trouble categorizing.
Sorry,
the
Ethan,
course.
I just have to say quickly, I'm just like chomping at the bit. This makes me almost physically ill. How good the course is. No, I'm having a hard time staying in my seat. Actually, you don't find anything like this in the academy. You don't find anything like this at university. Not really. You get a smattering of courses that people can link together, but what they don't have is like 6 courses by the people that do that best, linked together along an idea, not one idea. This isn't a survey course on one idea. It's obviously more living, transformational, and comprehensive than that. Like, this is a series of very complex ideas that interlock wonderfully and powerfully, and you get to just do this over a year. That doesn't it just doesn't exist. I've never seen such a thing. I mean, I don't know what to do with myself sitting here and hearing what you guys are going to teach. I mean, it's just absolutely wonderful, and it's so needed. God, I wish this had. I'm so happy to be a part of this thing. I wish this was around when I was in my formative time learning things. This is exactly the trajectory I'd want to be on. What an exciting program you guys have put together. Wow.
I mean, Mark, you took the words out of my mouth. Like you said pretty much what I was going to say, which is that it was so hard for me to categorize Charles's course as purely like a theological course in some way. And then when I looked at the course slate, I realized that I can't do that to any course. It's not possible. And it's because of the ways in which I think what we're looking at pulls and tugs so strongly on so many lines that are interconnected, that to try and tear them apart is almost, it's impossible. It's really impossible. And I want to name for folks, and I've spoken to all of you all individually a number of times. All of the membership stuff that I talked about earlier, like say things like Lectern Q&As, while the course that is running is in session, like say during Mark's course, during Charles's course, during Brendan's course, these guys will be the ones doing Lectern Q&As.
Yes.
So that John gets to take a break, but it's also that you guys can ask questions and get a different take or a different angle from what you might be used to with John. And I'll be hosting them as always, right? But I'm like happy to learn from you guys as well. I'm so excited to be able to sit in that room. And Charles, I don't want to hold you if you're taking too long, but I am also holding that question of just sort of like, as we sort of open each other's courses up, what are we actually converging around? What is the Lectern 2026?
I don't know. I mean, I have a similar reaction to Mark, which is, this is the first time I'm hearing all of our courses linked together. And I'm trying to see, okay, I like Mark sort of marveling at the interconnection, the Zen Buddhism, the Zen Neoplatonism. I mean, it makes me want to take the whole series as well, not just teach my unit.
Can we take the whole series?
Yeah.
Can I take the whole series?
Totally.
The answer is yes. No requirement to do so, but the option and the extended permission is given to you. Yes.
Can I just Charles, just quick, just to give you just a little bit more food for your response. After hearing everybody talk about the courses that they're planning on building, one thing that might not be obvious from the initiatory course that I'm going to be doing is, while we're doing modern cutting edge computational neuroscience, I never teach science that I don't think is transformational. I'm not interested in this at all. So I'm more and more eschewing informational approaches to transformational approaches. And actually, this computational neuroscience, I do it because really at my heart, because it's the right framework for revealing the meaning-making structures that I'm most interested in. I feel that this is actually, it's like a neuroscience of emptiness, this is what it lends itself to. So the end discussions that we have, like, we're going to be starting with, how does the perception system work? What are emotions, feelings, and moods? We're going to look into addiction and depression and the meaning crisis. But then the whole tail end is starting from this principled approach to what a cognitive system is. How do we best take care of that system? And the answer is exactly the kind of courses you guys are teaching, which is it directly dovetails with the wisdom and spiritual traditions, because it turns out that things that are within all of those traditions are just the right ones to care for and to mature and to help this sort of system transcend the ordinary boundaries it's stuck within. So it really is a kind of neuroscience of wisdom. But we stop there because I don't have years, and I don't have all year. I just sort of stop at, like, here's the mechanics. So how wonderful that it just gets picked up from there with, okay, now we've got the mechanics. What do we do with them? Like, let's fill that in, which looks like it might be the rest of the year, ending with the most theological, which is just perfect, actually. Start from neurons and information, and then end with the deeply spiritual and religious and theological. It's just a lovely arc.
I also want to reinforce what Mark said. I think Charles's course is summative in a very important way, because there's a deep sense in which the dialogos that is like a running thread through a lot of my work. Charles is trying to bring back, recover, or renew, I don't know what the right verb is, this deeply dialogical aspect. I mean, like, intrapsychically and interpsychically dialogical aspect to philosophy that, of course, is strongly associated with Socrates. And it's no coincidence that figure also had the divine sign, the daemon, right? And, like, for me, this question about the relationship between recovering the daemon, the dialogical aspect of our capacity for self-transcendence, and philosophy, especially philosophy as the cultivation of wisdom, I think this is pivotal. And so that's why I'm glad that we end on Charles's course. We like you said, Mark, we do the mechanics, and then Brendan gives us the history, and then Charles, I think, in a very powerful way, brings it to summation.
Yeah, I want to also jump in here, because I meet a lot of people in a practice context, and they might all be in the same room. They might spend a lot of time together, 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, and each of them come from a different angle. Hey, what's the neuroscience about this, right? Where's the provenance? Or they'll ask me big questions of how does it sit, like, philosophically? What about this, if not that? And something that, so just watching all of you talk through your courses, that's really kind of like floated up to the surface for me, is actually the ways in which all of those lines were never very clear in the first place. They were always very blurred. And I've seen people do stuff and practice in a particular way to describe science with religion and they don't know that they're doing it, right? But I look at, and I cannot ignore it, thanks to you guys, and my life is better for it. You know? So that really leans into, for me, the ways in which I've seen people's meaning-making structures evolve as an individual over time. And that can go from like, oh, I really want to feel a particular way, or I hold this worldview of my life, and over a period of time go, hang on, wait a second. And to watch them complexify is a really, really amazing thing. So I'm personally, yes, very happy that, Charles, you're doing your course. I imagine you can still hear this, even though it's internet cut out, right? Because it grounds it in provenance and it grounds it in the tradition.
Yeah.
And I'm also super excited that, Brendan, you're coming on and going,
yes,
like,
totally.
track this longer pattern. Look at what's happened from before. It's not just about the Greeks, it's even before then. So bless you.
I just want to emphasize that, you know, and Brendan's doing this amazing thing of doing the big, like he's doing it individual and collectively, but he's really doing a deep interweaving of, you know, epistemological and ontological development, and that is like a linchpin move in the entire arc of the entire argument running through all the courses. So turn things over to Brendan.
Knowing, being, valuing, amazing.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of framing that, because bringing the epistemological lens here is, I think, really important and to see the kind of structures and patterns that's not a radically arbitrary process, that there are certain kinds of ways that tends to unfold, whether that's in the individual lifespan in terms of how those kinds of paradigm shifts in the way that we think about things and make meaning, how those occur, to see a through line in our own meaning making processes is, I think, itself very revelatory, because a lot of the beautiful pluralism that we experience these days can also be bewildering to people in terms of how can you connect these dots, or is everything just sort of different? So one of the core aspects of this is being able to see that there are ways of understanding how you can connect up, whether that's historically or developmentally or in these different sorts of ways, how ideas sort of lead into each other, how things actually kind of unfold, and there's a process to it, rather than just sort of a chaotic jumble. There is some sort of method to the madness of our meaning making. So that's a really interesting thread. But the epistemological lens there, I think, is really elucidating. And you know, the developmental tradition that kind of comes from what Jean Piaget would call the genetic epistemological approach of seeing how ideas can be sort of tracked in a kind of evolving way, is when you can apply that to questions of your own way of thinking about ultimate concern, is very fascinating. There's actually a kind of processual logic by means of which certain key theological and meaning rich ideas unfold. And so to be able to map that is, I think, again, just very revelatory and provides a bit more structure and pattern to what can otherwise seem a rather bewildering way that these processes unfold. So the epistemological thing, and then seeing that process through history, is a really fascinating question. So that's going to be one of the things that we're going to be focusing on and raising as a serious point of inquiry. To what degree do individual meaning making processes have isomorphic similarities to what the kind of broader human path of meaning making has looked like? Obviously, we want to hold that question with a lot of openness and nuance. There are ways that, you know, these can be elided in very simplistic manners, but at the same time, there seems to be a kind of path or arc that the individual goes on, and to what degree can we use patterns that show up in those contexts to look at kind of the human evolutionary, cultural evolutionary story and see potentially similar kinds of processes underway. So that's a big open inquiry that we'll be exploring.
I think something is becoming clear to me. There's a book I use in Seeing God Again for the First Time, part 2, Circling the Elephant by Thada Matalil. And because a part of the prep for my courses, I'm going through all the cross-cultural philosophy. How do you do cross-cultural philosophy? How do you do comparative theology? All of that. The students don't have to read that. You just have to read the books. But he does a turn, a phrase, and it's a turn of orientation. And I think we're the through line. What is happening here is we're doing many things, but one of the things we're doing is we're actually saying pluralism isn't a problem. Pluralism is a promise. And we can show you how to appropriate that promise and live it out. And I think that's what's really powerfully happening.
Yeah, and maybe just to piggyback on that for a second, I mean, that's part. I mean, John, you mentioned this sort of paradigm shift, to this conversation that's developing, and things coming together, things getting integrated. It seems like there's something in the air. There's a kind of Weltgeist shift underway here, and I think it speaks to some of this. I mean, this is sort of one of the core explorations in metamodern discourses, moving through and beyond postmodern pluralism into something that can bring coherence to that pluralism, right? Yeah. So the threat of pluralism, as people experience it, tends to be a kind of radical relativism, which then can be experienced as a kind of nihilism. Oh, well, if this is my meaning-making structure and you've got a different one, then I guess it doesn't, and so being able to encounter that, but move through it to a wider expanse where you can have a space where you can hold that plurality, but with coherence, I think is the promise of this kind of paradigm shift that we're exploring. And so I think that's really a key thread.
Excellent.
And Brandon, if I understood what you said right, you're starting from sort of information theoretic approaches, right? You're thinking about information and thermodynamics. Exactly the same place I'm starting. This cognitive science program that's emerged is potentially the first unifying theory based right down in information science. And so you're preaching to the choir here, man. I love this point of moving past pluralism to something that can hold it together. It's lovely.
Well, and on that note, that is a really interesting touchstone for a lot of this. Is when part of the confusion of that pluralism is in the academy itself, and the different ways that in the different disciplines and the different fields of knowledge, different approaches, different methods, different theories. One of the things that seems core to this integrated pluralism that's emerging in a real way is the integration of being able to link up these kinds of approaches and methods and knowledge and theories together. So that, I mean, when you read a book, for example, like What is Life by Schrodinger, you've got a physicist talking about biology, but bringing a physicist's notion to the question of what is life. And all of a sudden you've made this transdisciplinary move where you're bringing these deep principles into a whole new realm and opening up a whole new way of thinking about something. And I see that happening right now across these different fields, where there's a kind of shared vocabulary and grammar starting to come online. And I think information theory and thermodynamics is a big part of that, systems theory, because you're able to bring together these disparate ways of looking at the world and see a profound unity or a kind of wholeness to it that goes all the way up these different levels of emergence, this different layers of complexity, but there's a deep continuity and a kind of integration that kind of binds it all together. And I think that's felt in a very viscerally profound, meaningful way, as though, there is a cosmos at the end of the day. There's an ordered whole to this amidst this beautiful diversity.
I feel so humbled just being with you all. It's really overwhelming. My God, thank you all for coming on, for doing this. And I mean, if you are interested in seeing how all of these lines thread together, take it from me. I don't understand everything. When I started watching your videos, John, listening to interviews that you've done, Brendan, right? It's hard to grab. It's hard to grok. It's tricky to understand. But what makes it easier? What made it easier for me to understand John was talking to John. What made it easier to understand? Brendan, I read your stuff a lot because we go through on the U-Talk circle, right? I will admit to your face, I didn't fully understand what you were about until I talked to you. And I think that's kind of what, John, you were naming at the start of the session that we've done today. It's a different way of being together. There's a different way of talking about complex ideas that doesn't reduce them, doesn't make them simple, retains their complexity, but you learn the navigational stance. And I think that's tremendously affording. There is one small, not so small, shiny thing that I want to show off before we close, but I want to hear what you have to say, John, before we close off this segment. How has all of this sort of landed for you?
For me, first of all, I just want to, I think Charles is gone now because he has to catch his flight. So hopefully he'll watch the recording later. And I just wanted to thank him. And I want to thank Brendan. Brendan, I'm so happy that you're going to be working, and so happy. And I hope this is the beginning of an ongoing relationship with the Lectern. You're most welcome here. And of course, Mark and I, we are destined to work together until I die. You know, we've got papers that we're both working on. And we collaborate at the University of Toronto, and then to bring Mark here, and you can all taste the crispness of his mind and the sweetness of his enthusiasm. I'm just so grateful. So. Ethan, the way you've threaded this is as well. I mean, you are the master threader. You do this when we do the Q&As. You do this when we're working together. You know, a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what is a heaven for? This is definitely exceeding my my grasp, and to some degree. You know, I mean, I've learned from all of you. I continue to learn from all of you, but to some degree, I've influenced all of you, and to see that taken up, and to see it affording you to contribute in such a creative and rich fashion to the Lectern. I'm extremely happy, and I don't mean American happiness about some sort of contempt. I mean, I have joy in that I think I am more closely comported and in contact with the true, the good, and the beautiful, and the meaningful. And so that's how what I'm experiencing right now. And I have good reason to believe that that's what will happen for the students who take these courses. And that makes me very happy indeed. As Mark said, and we both work, and we work in the same university, in the same department. And I think we're both loyal to U of T, but doesn't matter. The academic world doesn't do this. And this is a treasure to be a part of, and I want to thank all of you, and I especially want to thank you, Ethan. I told you when we were talking about this the other day, you're a true partner in this. The Lectern wouldn't be what it is without you, deeply, and so very, very grateful.
Thank you, good sir. It is my duty and my honor, and I do this. I do this not because it makes me happy. I do this because it fills me with joy. And so I want to thread one thing through. Mark, Brendan, I don't think I've shown this to you. So this might be your first time seeing this. But I have received some emails over the past year that navigation on the Lectern is really hard. It's kind of difficult to, sort of find out where things are, and it looks a little bit clunky. I know. I'm an artist at heart, and for a year, it has bugged me. So this year, finally, I did something about it. And so I'd like to present to you the new Lectern site, which will go up very shortly. You can take a look at this new format. We have a nav bar at the top, so that you can access about. You can see our memberships at a glance, courses at a glance. And we have a new segment called Insights. And if you're already on the Lectern, clicking my dashboard will take you to all of the content. And this is what it looks like. Welcome everybody to the new Lectern. These are the courses that are coming up: Generations of Joy, between East and West, Matters Over Time, Notes on Nothing, Daemons in Divinity. TIAMAT-X is already up here, and that means registrations are open. As the year goes by, you will see these portraits turn to full color, and then that means you can come in and get a spot in that course and get ready to have your mind blown and your life changed. These are all of the courses that are already here. All of the courses that have already been on have been migrated over, so you have access to them anyway. And if you want to know a little bit about how we teach, that's available here in quick blurbs for you to read. You can sign up a membership at the bottom of the screen if you want. if you would like to receive our newsletters, right, please sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of the page, but also they will be collected here anyway in case you missed them. Some of the wonderful work that's being done by our dear, I don't know if I call him a marketing guy anymore, because he's not really doing that. He's doing communication, he's doing so much of that work. David Kemper does a wonderful, wonderful job at taking like chunks of John's arguments, which will now have Mark's arguments and Brendan's arguments, ideas, and turn them into a digestible format that you can read. We thought that was so valuable, and I almost said vulnerable, but yeah, vulnerable and valuable, that to have them collected in one place so that you could go through them, share them, cost nothing. By all means, go ahead. If you would like to read something, or you saw that newsletter that was like, that was really interesting, you'll find it here. As the courses get populated, they're going to show up here. And then, of course, if you happen to have amnesia and forget something about John Vervaeke, you'll find on the About page a wonderful, wonderful breakdown of everything here that John has done.
This is amazing, Ethan. This is so beautiful.
Thank you very much. Yeah, books, videos are available. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Wow. Thank you very, very, very much, everybody. Yeah. So on the back of that, we have 9 minutes to go. I would just like to plug a few things which are coming, and then we can bring this to a close. Today, there will be some really interesting things happening. The Lectern Dialogue second episode that John and I did, where I invited Renz and Ellie, who are facilitators in training, will be premiering on YouTube at the top of the hour. So just enough time for water in, water out, and then watch that wonderful conversation if you're interested in TIAMAT-X, what we do at Tier 2. TIAMAT-X will have a Q&A on the 26th, same time, 10 a.m. Eastern, right, where we'll flip the tables, and then, John, it's your turn to ask me questions. How do we go this way?
Yeah.
And then on the 29th, there will be a Silk Road seminar, as you heard mentioned earlier by John, with Nicole Baden. And then that's going to be really wonderful. Remember, if you want to come into Silk Road seminar, you're a full-time university student, email me. I'll put you into that guest list so that you can jump into that conversation. And then lastly, our first officially first live on YouTube Lectern Q&A will be happening on the 30th, and that will be on ecologies of practice. We've talked about that quite a fair deal. You might have first heard it in Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, but a lot has happened since then.
Yeah, a lot.
You have a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, like bring them through and we'll answer those questions. So having said all of that, John, boss, I'm gonna turn it over to you to close us off. Thank you, good sir.
Well, it looks like Mark is also gone, so I'm glad I got to thank him. Brendan's still here. I'm really glad to be reconnecting with you, Brendan. We haven't connected in a bit, and this is really wonderful. I've been watching your work and admiring it, I guess, from afar, and now, I hope you take this as a compliment because it's intended to be so. You're obviously doing a lot of your own work, but I also like what you're doing with my work. And how you're extending it and developing it. That means a lot to me. And so that's, I wanted to say that before we closed. One of the things I hope the Lectern does is give people a way, in a way that just even coming on, I mean the Lectern courses, coming on and doing like the Silk Road seminars or the Lectern dialogues, that's great. But I'm hoping that people can get to know Brendan and Mark and Charles the way I have gotten to know them, and Ethan, you're getting to know them, and because Ananda was the friend and disciple of the Buddha, and Ananda's sweet and charming, and he never quite gets it, and his job is to never quite get it, although apparently he had a really good memory. And he once came to the Buddha and he said, I think that half of the way is the people we keep company with. And the Buddha turned to him and said, no, Ananda, that is the whole of the way. And Plato said something very, very similar, especially in his letters and in the dialogues. Keeping deep company with good people who are oriented towards the true, the good, the beautiful, and the meaningful is one of the best ways in which you can deeply and consistently, reliably improve your life in a way that it goes beyond what sort of popular culture and market capitalism can do for you. Many of you are now coming to the realization that while they have done and will continue to do wonderful things, they have also left a lot of important things out that are not being addressed. And they're also offering threats to us now that they're not, that doesn't seem like they're capable of addressing in a way that can help us now. I'm not saying the Lectern can comprehensively or completely do this, but it's a damn good start for doing it. And you got some of the best people to offer that. And so I want to really give you a strong invitation. If you're already a student, please continue. I love my students, and I think they know that. And for if you're not a student, really consider. I think this is very, very important and transformative in a way that you'll find in very short term and very long term, very, very enriching. So that's how I'm going to end it. But I wanted to make that very clear call to people that and make it as crystal clear as I could what's being offered here and why it's so imperative that you consider it deeply.
And with that, that's what we have in store for Lectern 2026. Thank you very, very much. We welcome you in. The door's already open. Don't bother knocking. You're invited. So, see you very, very soon. And thank you all for watching.